fever burning deep inside. I can't go to sleep at night. You took me from my home, the things I've known, and the water's running deep. The rain never drowns me. You're my flame. I surrender for no one. When I shatter these chains,
Welcome to a special episode of NFL 360 presented by The Home Depot, 20 years after the attacks of September 11th. I'm Melissa Stark. This show brings you stories that transcend football, the people and the moments that impact us in ways much bigger than the game. Tonight, we're coming to you from Foundation Hall inside the 9/11 Memorial and Museum in New York, home to the last column, the final piece of World Trade Center steel to be removed from Ground Zero. Over the next hour, we'll look back on a day that changed everything about our world, and that includes the game of football. The events of 9/11 unfolded on a Tuesday morning before week 2 of the 2001 season. NFL Commissioner Paul Tagliabue decided to postpone and reschedule the league's week 2 games. Here's Rich Eisen on how that day left a lasting mark.
20 years. 7,300 days.
2 planes have crashed into the World Trade Center in New York City.
175,200 hours. All that precious time robbed of nearly 3,000 souls on one dreadful day. Mostly in one nightmarish moment. Countless families and friends ripped apart. Heart-wrenching memories of those who perished. Knowing their attempts to save others could result in that loss of time for them. Some who could not be saved, calling their loved ones, knowing that they were out of time. All killed merely because a group of terrorists despised our American way of life. So, as we pause to remember them all, now, after 20 years, perhaps it's appropriate to ask ourselves, what have we done with this time? And what is our American way of life? After the Twin Towers fell, the Pentagon shook, and the Shanksville, Pennsylvania embers burned out. The country came together to heal, throwing arms around one another, serving up community service and empathy in loving spoonfuls. Amidst the palpable sadness and mourning, we bonded in a collective sense of who we were as a nation, that the so-called other side were the ones who attacked us, and not our neighbors, or healthcare professionals, or people just trying to do their jobs in the local store. On this solemn 2-decade anniversary of one of the worst days in American history, it's fair to ask, have we lost our sense of team? 20 years ago, when the open wounds began to heal, many turned to the sports world and especially the NFL for a sense of normalcy.
He's got it on the run to the goal line, touchdown!
For a sense of community in the face of fear. For a sense of compassion in the face of dread. And with the whole world watching, for a sense of patriotism in the name of taking up the cause for one single side, the American side. Perhaps now,
everyone is being asked to socially distance.
with the fight seemingly everywhere around us,
Affecting over 2 million people worldwide.
on the outset of another football season, we can all look to the NFL for a sense of teamwork. And not to lose ourselves in the escape. Times appear to be too fraught for just that. No, let's look to the NFL for inspiration as to what makes a successful team. Everyone coming together, fighting for each other, not against each other.
Hey, we worked all year for this moment right here.
Not turning against one another, but turning out for each other. While understanding each other and knowing that no one is greater than the other or the collective. Instead of being just so angry. Perhaps after 20 years, it's time for us to cherish the time and each other in honor of the memories of those who perished on 9/11 wishing they had the time that we have to make life better.
We are 4 boys in my family. I'm number 3 of 4, and all 3 of my brothers are New York City firemen. My brother Jimmy, he was one of the first responders into Tower 1. I can never fathom what him or any of his colleagues went through that day, but also my other 2 brothers on the rescue efforts and then the cleanup efforts and the stories you don't want to hear, but it's something that people need to hear. People need to know history. Just people need to know how much blood was on that flag that day. To hold that high, and for me to come back a week later, and it just so happens we were playing the New York Jets, and was asked to have my brothers and my dad, who's a retired New York City cop, up there in the middle of the field on the 50-yard line. People knew my name and people knew my story, and my brothers were out there. They weren't out there for me. They weren't out there for the Patriots or the Jets, but cheering for my brothers and my dad who are standing out there.
Here at the 9/11 Memorial and Museum and across New York, the feeling of loss is still profound, and almost anyone you talk to has a connection to what happened. The brother of current New York Jets head coach Robert Saleh was in the South Tower that day, and his experience changed the path of Saleh's life and career.
New York has always been a place where dreamers come to realize their greatest ambitions.
Myself and the entire coaching staff are beyond excited to work with each and every single one of you. There's no doubt this is home.
It's where Robert Saleh's grit, drive, and belief made him the first Muslim American head coach in NFL history. This is Saleh's first year on the job, but in many ways, his emotional journey to get here began here on a clear September day 20 years ago.
My brother was in the second tower. That first tower got hit. There was such an explosion that it shook everything. He went right to the stairwell and started going down the stairs. I believe he was in the 64th floor, I believe it was. He remembers halfway down that on the intercom system, the PA announcer calling everybody back, saying it was an isolated incident, go back to your desks, keep everything under control, and my brother just kept on rolling. And he said he was near the bottom of the steps when his building got hit and shook everything. And, he got out and beelined, just kept on running. He didn't stay to watch, he didn't look up. I didn't hear that he was safe until about 4 or 5 towards the end of that day. It was a very, very long day. You look at the events that transpired, you look at my brother, and, he was 25 at the time, I believe, and it's just like, is he doing what he really wanted to do, or am I doing what I wanted to do? I was a credit analyst for Comerica Bank World Headquarters in downtown Detroit, sat in a cubicle, and crunched numbers all day. That Super Bowl hit, awesome game, obviously, Patriots-Rams, and that next morning I'm sitting in my cubicle and I start crying. My dad lives, breathes football, and so we were kind of raised that way. He always regretted not coaching football. I just started getting this urge to coach and give it a try.
Driven by his passion for football and a renewed appreciation for the value of time, Saleh left his desk job. He decided to pursue his NFL coaching dream. It was a path that took him through the assistant ranks, including a memorable stop at a familiar place.
From MetLife Stadium, it is Super Bowl 48 between the Seahawks and the Denver Broncos.
I knew we were going to win. I was like, this is too perfect for us to have a Super Bowl here in New York. And my brother was there. He went to the game, and we just thought about it. Man, this is crazy. Here we are in the Super Bowl where 9/11 happened, in New York. What are the odds, So it's a little surreal.
Your Seahawks, Super Bowl 48 champions.
That's awesome job.
I love you too, man. I love you too, man.
We are, Jack. We got the rain, and we went to the White House.
In returning to New York, he comes full circle to a place where tragedy, hope, and destiny are forever intertwined.
Now to be here as part of the New York Jets and knowing that our first game is a day after the 20th anniversary, I mean, I'm supposed to be here.
Talked to my brother, everything, 9/11 was in New York, we won a Super Bowl in New York, and here we are in New York. And it's like, it's almost supposed to happen.
I appreciate that for you guys put it all on the line. I don't give a for the preseason.
We're here at the 9/11 Museum's Memorial Hall, also known as the Blue Wall. It's a space devoted to the memory of those lost on that day. This collection of watercolor drawings represents each victim of the attacks, lives taken way too soon. The New York Giants head coach in 2001 was Jim Fassel. He passed away earlier this year, but that season, he had to assume a role he never could have imagined, helping his city find hope in the midst of heartbreak.
What it comes down to is, do the players trust the coach? That's the one thing that Jim had built with his players. They trusted him.
There was a connection there that we all had together, and he was the glue for that.
He gave me great opportunities as a young kid to be around football. I remember when he got the job in '97, he called me in my dorm room, and I thought, amazing opportunity for him. Then being able to be on the sideline was first year, he was the coach of the year, and he took a ton of pride in representing the Giants.
I'm raising the ante. Anybody wants in, get in. Anybody wants out, can get out. Okay? This team is going to the playoffs.
That confidence that he gave us on a regular basis, can't talk enough about his massaging of egos and his understanding of how to play psychologist with a team of 53 people from, all these different backgrounds.
It gave us the freedom to just go play.
Hennessy throws, swings it right, and the pass nearly, it is intercepted by Sehorn. He's got it on the run, down the left sideline, cuts it at the 10, 5, touchdown!
Coach Fassel was one of those coaches that had no problem letting you know how he felt.
Hey, I've never seen a play like that, man. Hey, Jay, I've never seen anything like that.
Fassel goes to top of the shoulder.
They head now to their third Super Bowl, the first since 1990.
We had played Denver first Monday night game the night before 9/11. We flew all night, landed about 7 a.m. As it turned out, we landed right next to where the terrorists were at that moment. I walked out into our parking lot, and I had binoculars. We actually saw the United Airlines plane banking into the second tower.
It hit so close to home. My dad walked to the top of the bleachers that day. He could see the smoke and the fires. My grandpa's a firefighter in Anaheim, California, growing up. The fire department was a big thing in my dad's and my grandparents' life, and so I think it hit home for him. My dad said, what would my dad do?
We took a bus to Ground Zero with our players, and we were escorted by Chief Esposito. And we walked through all the people that were working there, the first responders. Chief Esposito had given me his baseball cap with the NYPD lettering, and I gave that to Jim, and he wore it in the game. We were all very, very emotional.
I remember Jim wearing that hat. It was just a way to let them know that they were a part of us and we were a part of them.
Everyone has come together. This tremendous feeling of unity as I travel to Kansas City. And the Giants have that as they come here today representing New York.
To the back of the end zone, intercepted by Sean Williams. Big interception by Sean Williams. Dane to the goal line, dives ahead, touchdown!
That Kansas City game, hard to get emotional, but my dad has a picture of their whole team and their whole organization in their locker room after the game, all wearing the NYPDFDNY hats.
It exemplified exactly what sports is, a release, an escape. During all that, He kept the team together, and I think that really bonded him to the team.
June 7th. I was in my office in Dallas, and I found out early that morning that he'd been taken to the hospital just for a checkup. And then, it might have been 2 hours later, my brother called and said my dad had passed. He had that picture blown up in his house, and when we all reconvened there as kids and family after his passing, there was certain things that we all kind of wanted as tokens to just put in our house in memory of my dad, and I wanted that picture. Sorry.
We stayed steadfast with our devotion to the people who had suffered the most on 9/11. And I can't imagine, in really all my experiences in football, that there was any coach at any period that could have handled the situation any better than Jim did.
Here at the 9/11 Memorial and Museum, the color of this room has particular meaning. The blue represents the clear sky above Manhattan on that beautiful September morning, a last sense of calm before everything changed. In 2001, I was part of ABC's Monday Night Football broadcast, a team headlined by Al Michaels, the renowned play-by-play voice who's called many of the defining sporting events of all time. Here's my conversation with Al about the unique experience of that season. It's great to see you, Al. Thanks so much for joining us.
Melissa, it's been terrific. 20 years since we were together back in 2001.
Well, we're going to go back in time because the game on Monday Night Football, it was the season kickoff, the first game ever at Invesco Field, Giants at Broncos. We had the excitement of that game, and then the next morning, the whole world changed.
It did, in an instant, and it was dramatic. I remember thinking that, how was it possible for our borders to be penetrated? This was something that happened to folks in other countries, not the United States of America.
Paul Tagliabue made a somewhat unprecedented decision to postpone the Week 2 games. What did you think of that?
Well, I think he had to do that. First of all, I mean, nobody could fly anywhere. So the planes were grounded. The country was in a bit of a lockdown. And to think that you could go ahead and play football on Sunday would have been, I think, absurd. And I know a lot of the players weren't ready to play. A lot of the coaches weren't ready to coach. And certainly the fans, I don't think, were in any mood to have football that soon, that early. So I think Tagliabue made the exact right decision to postpone those games.
Well, I know for me, I lived in New York City at the time, and we could see the towers from our balcony. My husband, Mike, worked at Morgan Stanley, and we knew many people in the buildings. Football obviously seemed trivial at the moment, but also there were some who argued, and as we saw as the season went on, football was almost a healing and a uniting factor, all of sports.
It was, and as a country, we had taken a major blow, put it in terms of boxing. We'd been knocked down. We'd been knocked down and we'd taken an 8 count. But you had to get back up to your feet and scramble back into the fight and back into the fray, and we were able to do it.
Hi, everyone. I'm Al Michaels. Welcome to Green Bay. 2 weeks ago, and God, it seems like 10 years ago, we opened up our 32nd season.
Our first game back was in Green Bay, so that was Week 2. I remember my opening report was all about security and the security in the stadiums, because that was a fear.
Al, this past week, the NFL worked with all the teams, the FBI, Secret Service, FAA, to increase security and try to...
But I know we really tried to make that game all about resilience and America.
I mean, everybody was like on tenterhooks, afraid to really show emotion. You didn't know how to feel or how to respond, or do you cheer? What do you do? The seminal moment in that game would be when the Packers came out of the tunnel and Chris Gizzi, who was an Air Force grad and a reservist, had that big American flag and he was waving it. And that's when, the crowd felt as if they could let their emotions loose.
It was incredible. I mean, it was all emotional, everything we experienced, I think, that year. But we had the first primetime game on Monday Night Football back in New York. It was the 49ers at Jets. And that was, I mean, the sense of patriotism, emotion, it was all there.
I grew up in New York. I grew up in Brooklyn, so I get New York. I understand it. I lived there long enough to get what New York's all about. And then to get out to the stadium that night and for that game, that was in a way somewhat, I think, therapeutic for the fans of New York to have that game taking place there and to have the honorees there and the people that were the first responders and the heroes of 9/11. So I think that night was special, and it helped, again, gradually and slowly to help bring everything back to what we knew would be, at some point, some sense of normalcy.
Well said, as always, Al. Thank you so much for joining us. We're looking forward to another great season, and we'll see you on Sunday nights.
Yes, you will. Thank you, Melissa.
Where do you even start to unravel, to clean up, to search for survivors in any of this? And miraculously enough, New York did it. Country did it. And to see first responders and firefighters coming from all around the country, everybody came together in a way in which I've never seen the state, the country, the city ever come together before. And that was the only reason we were able to bounce back. It was a collective effort.
The 9/11 Memorial and Museum displays the damaged fire truck from FDNY Ladder Company 3, reminding us that September 11th was a global tragedy, but also a local one. The Jets and Giants wore special patches during the 2001 season to commemorate the fallen firefighters from New York City and beyond. And members of the NYPD and FDNY turned their own annual football game into a tribute to family members lost, but never forgotten.
For nearly half a century, the annual NYPD-FDNY football game has raised money for the families of those lost in the line of duty. This year's game, 20 years after 9/11, carries added weight.
20 years goes so quick, right? But I know that for some of us that felt the direct impact of that day, it may seem like it was yesterday.
Give me a second. Still gets me 20 years later.
September 11th, 2001 was by far the deadliest day for the New York City Fire Department and had an especially painful impact on the FDNY Football Club, known as the Bravest.
343 is how many firefighters were killed on 9/11. We lost 22 from the team, but 343 is how many guys went into those buildings and didn't come out.
8 months after 9/11, the annual matchup resumed, this time as a memorial, a tribute to their fallen brothers.
They were with us on the field in 2001 and then not there in 2002. We were playing for them that season, you know? They were with us.
We wanted to kind of like heal ourselves, you know?
The healing process has been long and painful, given the unbearable losses. 343 members of the FDNY and 23 more from the NYPD.
In our locker room in the 02 game, you know, Gary McCarthy read off a roll call.
We're gonna take him on the field. Let's go. Police Officer John DeLara. Present. Police Officer Vincent Dan. Present. Police Officer Robert Fangio.
Present. We still do that on the early morning of September 11th.
There were 3 towers in the city of New York prior to 9/11. 2 of them went down. The third one's standing in this room. Just go out and show the guts. You showed up September 11th, and you'll take it home, baby. That's it.
In the 2002 game, the FDNY's inspired effort came up short. A a recurring theme in a series that has seen the NYPD hold a 31-16 all-time advantage.
You know, we said we were going to try to win it for the guys. To go into Giant Stadium and lose, you would have liked the fairy tale ending. But it's still tough.
2 decades after the crushing loss at Giant Stadium, Steve Orr and John Rosati are coaching this year's FDNY team, and their inspiration is clear.
All week long, people have been asking me, what's the connection of this team to the team 20 years ago, post 9/11? The connection is every person in this room in the same exact situation would do the exact same thing as the brothers who went into those buildings. Damn right. Okay?
I would do it right now. I would go right now. You know, guys knew they were gonna die that day, and that's what guys did. Let's go do our job.
The participants in this year's game wear the FDNY emblem on their chests, proudly representing those who are here in spirit. Late in the first half, the NYPD gets on the board.
It's caught! Oh, Chris McGrane!
In the third, the FDNY answers the call.
3rd and 9, Ryan lost one up. Oh! It's picked off by the FDNY!
In the game's crucial moments, the firefighters go on a decisive run for the FDNY.
Caught! Yes! Touchdown, Joe Herman!
Throw it! Throw it!
It is victory and redemption.
Just special to win and be able to do that for the guys before us. That's what it's all about.
But for both sides, the emotions run deeper.
It felt like they're smiling. They're smiling. Hopefully they're smiling at everything this team has accomplished in 20 years. You know, we've come a long way.
A sense of unity, kinship.
Pleasure, baby. Love you, man. Love you. Stay safe out there.
And remembrance.
Every guy that was there that day and the guys that were at the recovery know that when we say we'll never forget, we won't. And we won't let the new guys coming along ever forget. It's just part of our life.
The FDNY and the cops, we're servants to the city.
This is ours.
And still, we're competitive with each other in a friendly game of football. I mean, it shows the American spirit of always being competitive and always looking out for each other. And we do that. Whatever they did that day didn't kill our spirit. If anything, it made us stronger. New York City is strong.